Welcome back to KHTS. I am Jade Aubuchon, KHTS co-news director, and I'm joined today by Cary Quashen of Action.
Cary Quashen?
Cary.
Yeah, my name
It's
changed.
an early
I like
morning.
that.
Hey, I have barely been able to finish my coffee.
You've been busy. I know.
I have been busy. Like I was just telling you right before we started this, I had a very long day on Sunday, and then my day immediately started Monday morning for the main reason that we're actually here to talk. Like I was saying, you are represented from Action Family Counseling or Action Drug Rehab.
Mm-hmm.
And yesterday was a bit of a doozy. Thankfully, it ended well. But we had a man who barricaded himself in his car and drove himself into the end of a cul-de-sac and was in his car barricaded for about 6 hours. Did you manage to see any of that?
Yes, I actually, somebody was letting me know something was going on, so I went online and checked it out. I was watching you actually for a minute. I was running groups and doing all kinds of stuff with real live people that were on drugs, but until I heard the explosion and I went, oh boy.
Yeah.
And then it kind of went dark for a minute and that's all I knew.
Yeah. So yesterday was a little bit crazy. As I said, it ended well. Everybody ended up being safe, which unfortunately we can't always say in these situations.
No.
But I'll give you a little bit of a recap for you and everybody who's listening. So it started as a call at about 6:22 a.m. about a psychological incident on Newhouse Street in Canyon Country, and it was describing a 35-year-old man who was barricaded in his vehicle. But how it actually started was a little bit before that in the morning. This man had robbed the 7-Eleven over on Bouquet and Urbandale over in Saugus.
Right.
And then they followed him in his vehicle to this cul-de-sac in Canyon Country. So we've already said that this involves meth and addiction and the associated mental illness. So how often do we hear these stories about people who turn to crime or erratic behavior because of addiction?
Well, I mean, I deal with it every day. I've been doing this now for 40 plus years, so it does never surprise me. You got to look at it a couple of different ways. Number one, somebody that's using drugs, first thing they do when they wake up in the morning, as they're going to the bathroom, is try to figure out where they're going to get their drugs.
Well, I mean, we can kind of understand that. I think anybody who drinks coffee, it's also an addiction.
Exactly.
I think when you're waking up in the morning, you're going, oh man, I can't wait until I get that first cup of coffee. Or how often do we see the don't talk to me until I've had my first cup of coffee?
Exactly. But coffee, I mean, we can go to the store, we can buy it. But when it comes to drugs, I mean, most of these people, not most of them, a lot of people aren't working.
Yeah.
Let's face it. And they're strung out on some kind of drug, and their mind is saying, feed me real quick, and their body is they're addicted to physical stuff, and they have no choice but to go out and get it somehow. It's fight or flight. Yeah. It's live or die in their minds. So if they're not working, what do? I mean, I hear, we know about the robberies, but what about, daily they're walking in and out of Targets and Walmarts and other stores, and they're stealing and returning and that kind of stuff. And you got somebody like this sounds to me like somebody that was on a run.
Yes.
And a run means that they've been using meth for more than a day. And when somebody is doing that, you put the meth in their system, it's exploding their minds with dopamine and serotonin. The boost is incredible. So it's a shortcut to the pleasure zone of your brain. As soon as it hits, it feels different and better than anything you ever felt before. But what it's also doing is causing all kinds of craziness. If you haven't slept for a day, if you're not eating right, now you haven't slept for 2 days, you're not eating right, you start hallucinating. Mm-hmm. You see, even in somebody that isn't using drugs, with lack of sleep, there's hallucinations and all kinds of stuff. But when it comes to crystal meth, it causes, it looks like psychosis or schizophrenia. I mean, you're trying to reason with somebody that can't reason.
Yes, and we found that out firsthand. So as I said, this call came in at about 6:22. I got on scene as the first reporter on scene, actually, at about 8 or so. And it was a very interesting situation because this is in the middle of a neighborhood. It is nearby schools. Thankfully, none of them were considered to be under risk because this man is barricaded in his vehicle. There were initial reports that he was armed. That turned out to not be the case. He had an airsoft gun in his vehicle. However, something that we know as people who have dealt with these sorts of situations
Right.
before is just because somebody says they aren't armed, you don't know that.
You
You don't
never
know that.
yeah.
And especially when it comes to somebody who has been pushed to the point where they feel they are unsafe and they have
Right.
barricaded themselves somewhere. And that's what was going on with this guy.
Mm.
At about 9:30. So I've been there for an hour and a half with a couple of our other local media members. The sister of the man in the car comes running over to us with a member of law enforcement and says he wants to talk to you, to our local reporter, Austin Dave,
Right.
which shout out to him. I love him. He's a great guy.
Yeah, Austin's
I think
terrific.
anybody who's
Right.
familiar with what's happening in Santa Clarita knows Austin.
Mm-hmm.
But this guy, who I'm not going to say his name, it will come out, but not right here.
Right.
He wants to talk to the media. And at the end of the day, that's all this guy wants, is he wants to be heard.
Right.
And he is scared that when he gets out of the car, he is going to be silenced and that he is going to be suppressed by law enforcement.
Mm-hmm.
His main concern is that he is going to be grabbed and no one is going to hear what he has to say.
He wanted his voice to be heard.
He wanted his voice to be heard, which I think that's something a lot of us can empathize with.
Of course.
And like I said, Austin did a great job trying to get this guy to come out of the vehicle, you know, saying like, hey, you want to be heard? We're here. Our cameras are here. We have all these media people here. I think it was just me and Austin at the time, but everybody else showed up within the next 5 minutes.
Yeah,
So I'm counting
sure
them.
it turned into a circus after a minute.
Yeah, it was a bit interesting. And this guy starts talking, and you can immediately tell what this man is going through is a mental health crisis.
Right.
Because he is, I'm going to narrow it down, but he starts talking about bacteria.
Okay, yeah.
And that it is a bacteria that is in e-cigarettes that is starting to control people. We've heard this before. It is the stereotypical.
Sadly, yes, lots.
Which, as you know, and as I've learned quite a bit, I mean, isn't one of the most common things that can happen with meth are delusions and hallucinations of all kinds. And this guy is saying that he can see the bacteria.
Things, you see things,
he
you
knows
feel
the bacteria.
things, you smell things.
But that's the thing, is that I think we need to remember, whether we're dealing with somebody who is dealing with mental illness that includes these delusions, or if they are dealing with addiction, is that this is real to this guy.
Yes, this is his or her reality right now, period.
Yeah.
And you could tell him the voices aren't real, and what he smells isn't real, and what he sees isn't real, and the bugs that they're feeling crawling them isn't real, and the thing they think is planted in their ear isn't real. But guess what?
They're experiencing it.
It is real.
It is real to them, yes.
For sure. If they think that God's talking to them, he is at the moment in their mind. If they think that there's people in the trees, it's real at the time. I mean, I had to put somebody in treatment one time that got bailed out of jail, but he was on a 3-day crystal meth run, and he was shooting mean leprechauns out of a tree that he really believed were real. I mean, I've seen everything. When it comes to meth, I believe, I mean, obviously we're in an opioid crisis right now, and fentanyl's killing thousands and thousands of people, but methamphetamine, crystal meth, crack, it's been the worst drug ever in history. What it does mentally and emotionally and physically to people is disgusting at best.
Yeah, and it was a really tough situation. Austin handled it very well.
Because you're trying to reason with someone that there is no reasoning.
And I think that was where he was successful, is he didn't try to reason with this guy. He
Right.
didn't try to go, what?
Yeah.
What are you talking about? Or, okay, dude, whatever. He went, okay, I'm here. I'm happy to listen to you. You just got to get out of the car. And given from everything I've learned, that is the right approach for somebody who is dealing with psychosis of any kind. Is don't enforce their belief, but listen to them.
Correct. You can't enforce it because they're already doing that to themselves.
Yeah.
You can listen to them. You can let them know that you are here with them and that they're safe. You can work on their breathing, and you can talk to them nice and slowly. You don't want to escalate ever. You don't want to challenge what they're believing is real, because to them it's real. We had a girl in rehab 2 weeks ago that I had to call the sheriff. She absolutely believed that we had her brother or someone had her brother in our in our what's it called little thing in the back storage room.
Oh.
So we had to open the storage room and show her their brother wasn't there, and then it was in a closet, and we showed her that. But she absolutely believed her brother was on property somewhere. So we eventually got her admitted to a behavioral health unit, which was fine. I mean, she came with me, and we took her, and they gave her some medication. She slept for 3 days, and fortunately came out of the psychosis.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing that's going to work with someone that's in that zone. They've been up for 2 or 3 days. They're on meth. They're seeing and hearing things that aren't there. They believe that they're being watched. There's bacteria in the e-cigarettes or in the air, whatever it is. They have to crash. That's the only medicine that really works is sleep. They have to get sleep.
Yeah. Like I said, this series of phone calls started at about 9:30. So we're already talking about 3 hours essentially after this has started. And it went on for until 12 p.m. when he ended up having to be tear gassed out because they could not get him during the negotiations to calm down enough to a point where he would want to get out of the car.
The longer he's in the car, the more paranoid he was going to get.
Exactly.
The more you try to talk him out, the more scared he's going to get.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, you know, if you were in the car and you thought the cops were going to attack you, would you want to get out?
No, it's your safety.
From his reality, it's a completely reasonable thought process.
Mm-hmm.
But we're dealing with different realities, so that's partially why it was so difficult. But we did learn a little bit about this guy as we were at the scene covering because his family was there. This is not somebody who is on their own. He does have a support system.
Right.
His older sister, she came to the scene. She was there. She was on the phone with him trying to help.
You got a feel for the family, huh?
I talked with her a little bit. They're a few years apart. This is her baby brother. His wife was there. This is a husband, a father, a son. I mean, his mom's on the phone trying to talk to him. And this is a brother.
Drug addiction does not... It's not prejudice.
No, it affects everybody.
Whoever. Exactly.
And this is someone who has a support system, who has just gone down a bad path and now is living in his car.
Right.
And had to be tear gassed and arrested because of this reliance on this substance that has turned him to crime and potential harm to others. And most importantly, in this case, which thankfully nobody was near him, this is what they were most concerned about, to himself.
Of course. And you know, the jails today, I mean, they really are mental health clinics because so many people in jails today are there because of some kind of mental illness or substance abuse. So it's just sad. The system is sad right now when it comes to getting help for people that are suffering from things like that. You know that drug abuse, I mean, using drugs isn't illegal. I mean, it really isn't. You can't be put on a hold for drug abuse. You could be put on a hold if you're a threat to yourself. I mean, a real threat. You have a plan to kill yourself. You have the means and ways of carrying it out. You're going to kill somebody else. Or you're just completely unable to take care of yourself. If you can go through a trash can, they can't put you on a hold because you know how to get food. If you can close yourself, they can't put you on a hold. But if you're using meth and heroin and stuff that can kill you or drive you crazy, they're not going to put you on a hold for that stuff. So there's no help until something terrible like this happens. Now, I mean, you know, thank God he's alive.
Yes.
Thank God he's safe. And he is in jail and he is going to get some kind of help.
Yes. And we've seen this go wrong before. We've seen it go wrong in Santa Clarita before, not necessarily with a barricaded suspect, but I'll compare it to, we recently got the released footage from an officer-involved shooting that happened back in January at the mall near Macy's. And this was someone who was dealing with mental illness. He was homeless. And he literally says, either you kill me or I'm going to kill you and I'm going to kill everyone else around me.
Yep.
And he moved forward with that threat against the deputy who then had to shoot him because she was threatened. That doesn't necessarily happen in a vacuum. You're still talking about mental illness of some kind and someone who has proven their threat to themselves and to others. Whether it was addiction in this situation, I'm talking about back in January, we don't know. And honestly, it doesn't matter at this point.
Correct. But put yourself in someone's place. I mean, you're on drugs. You're seeing things that aren't there. You're feeling things that aren't there. You believe that people are going to kill you. I mean, it's fight or flight. It's live or die in their minds. They don't know what else to do. So you have a guy that just did some kind of robbery. He knew that.
Yeah.
He was also on meth, and he's now barricaded in a car with police everywhere.
Yeah.
So what's going through his head, of course, and he's also believing there's bacteria and things, and who else knows what was going on. So he was just trying to figure out how to stay alive.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's something I say often, especially when people talk about their experiences, or you might question why people act a certain way, is that everyone is a main character in their own story. Everybody thinks to a certain point that what they are experiencing is the most important thing that is happening, which naturally, it's your own life.
Well, it is to them at the moment.
Yeah.
Right.
But when you combine it with these drives due to addiction or due to mental health or due to,
Right.
Maybe you need to pay bills. That's a drive.
Absolutely. Maybe you need to pay bills, but you can't.
Exactly. It all comes down to, what do you need? And at the end of the day, when you combine that with these delusions, it makes you believe that you could be important enough to be the only person to see things as they truly are. And if somebody is challenging that, when you're trying to be open with them and have them support you, and they're saying, you're insane, all you're going to do is shut down.
It makes everything worse. It's like, or even like that somebody's suicidal. Get over it. You got a good life. What's wrong with you? I mean, that just makes things worse. And if somebody believes that things are planted in their ears, or there's bacteria in their vape, how are you going to tell them it's not true when they absolutely 100% believe that's a fact? So challenging that is not the right way to deal with it. I hear you. I understand what you're seeing and what you believe is happening right now, but let's breathe. Let's get things under control. Let's take it easy for a minute. And you want to talk people down that way instead of challenging them.
So would you say that essentially the approach is to kind of distract and diffuse until the high comes down?
Exactly. And always get professional help, because you just don't know. If somebody is that psychotic due to drugs, it could go sour anytime. I ran psych units for years and years and years, and you can see somebody, I mean, they start and you can just watch it escalate until they want to get suicide by cop or whatever it is that they want. But they can become violent. So if somebody is showing any kind of violence, the first thing you want to do is make sure that you have contacted law enforcement so they can come do a well check or something like that.
So when it comes to these situations, you already said that it's not illegal to use drugs. And some of the concerns that family or friends or loved ones might have is, my loved one is going through this situation. They're using drugs. Are they going to get arrested? Is that necessarily what happens?
If they pull a crime, then yes, they will get arrested. If they're just sitting in their room using drugs, probably not. I mean, I actually know that even if they're getting pulled over, a lot of times law enforcement isn't taking them in because they don't keep them anyways. They're just taking the drug, making them get rid of it. I've seen some really crazy stuff in the last year when it comes to that. But I'll tell you what. Why would you worry about them getting arrested if they're using drugs anyways? I mean, this guy clearly is safer in jail. Not that I want anyone to go to jail, but he's safer in jail right now to the community and himself than if he wasn't. So sometimes the worst is the best when it comes to getting someone help. Getting arrested is surely better than watching somebody use fentanyl and overdose or use crystal meth and blow their mind out. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So a lot of times what parents and wives and husbands and brothers and sisters and aunts and uncles want to enable. They want to make sure that they're here, safe. If they're doing it at home, it's safer than if they're doing it outside. No, they're probably using more because they're at home and they have a place to do it. So it's just kind of, our thinking has to change a little bit.
Yeah, and I was doing a little bit of research before we did this segment, and I was seeing that it is possible, and according to some studies, up to 46% of crystal meth users will experience delusions or psychosis of some kind.
Oh, I believe it's higher than that.
Yeah.
You know, when we get phone calls to put people in. I own rehabs. When we get
Yeah.
people that want to come in, and I find out that it's a meth kind of a deal. First things I want to talk to them even on the phone and make sure that they're capable and able to sit in a rehab,
Yeah.
that they're not psychotic. A lot of times we have to put somebody in a mental health facility for a few days, let them crash, get out, get the psychosis gone before they're able to even sit in a rehab, sit in a group, or walk around or anything. I mean, the meth-induced psychosis is terrible. It's literally like someone is in a huge crisis with psychosis or schizophrenia, and you can't tell the difference. So you really want to make sure that it's safe before you even treat them.
So when it comes
Even at the behavioral health unit, when
Oh,
I
really?
was running here, and somebody was coming in, they went to the ER first and got some Ativan and stuff like that, so they would knock out. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Wow. When it comes to, like, let's say somebody's at home, mom and dad call and say, like, hey, my kid is going through this. They're saying that there's bugs crawling out the walls or something.
Mm-hmm.
At what point in these delusions do you normally see people actually finally willing to take help?
It's a lot. They go in and out of psychosis a lot. I mean, they'll hear things, they'll see things, and then their brain will say it's real, and then they'll go, oh my God, maybe it's not.
Mm-hmm.
So you might have that little window, and that's when you want to jump. If they want to go to rehab, you jump. If it's, boy, I need help, and the delusions are getting me crazy, and I don't know what's real and what's not. I hear that a lot. I would then definitely say bring them to an ER and get them a psych eval. And at worst, they'll give them some Ativan that'll calm them down. So when you find that window, jump, because the window can open and close really quick. So if somebody says, help me, that's when you help them. If you're at home and they're starting to get violent, and I dealt with this 2 days ago with an adolescent. Moms called me, and the kid's breaking everything up in the house. He's violent. He's outside screaming and yelling. And I said, you need to call the sheriff, man, before this gets worse. I don't want my kid arrested. I said, this is a 16-year-old boy.
Yeah.
I said, let them know that he's got some psychotic behavior, that he's got mental health issues, and that you need him to be evaluated for a psych hold. So give as much information to 911 when you call as you can, so they know what they're coming to deal with.
Yeah, and I think
And don't be afraid to call, because, I mean, moms and dads and husbands and wives and brothers and sisters, you're all not professionals. I mean, when it comes to something like that, you need professional help.
Yeah, you need help. And at the end of the day, nobody wants to see anybody being put down a path that they can't recover from, whether it is an interaction with law enforcement like we saw yesterday that, as we said, could have gotten so much worse.
Oh, yes.
So much worse. This was 6 hours of this guy in this car refusing to get out.
Mm-hmm.
And it could have gone bad at any time.
Yep. Even with an airsoft gun, if he pulled it up.
If he had pulled that out, if he had just gotten out and started advancing, we've seen that happen before. We had essentially a suicide. Thankfully, this one is not on. Suicide by cop a couple of years back, where that is exactly what the guy did. He walked into the station with an airsoft looking handgun.
That's right. I remember that. Yeah.
So what, as we're coming to the end of our time here, what would you suggest that family members of substance abusers and people who have mental health worries and possibly being exacerbated by that, what would you suggest that they do?
Well, number one, always make sure you are safe. Number one, make sure that you and everyone around is safe. If there's any violence or threat of violence, you definitely want to make sure you get professional help. Even no matter what's going on, you want to call law enforcement and say, this is a mental health issue that can go bad real quick, and I'm very scared for my safety. Please send somebody.
And I think at the end of the day, you'd rather your loved one get arrested. If that happens, you'd rather them be arrested than be dead.
Of course. And I mean, I was also talking to a mom the other day. The kid is abusing her. I said, call the sheriff. Well, I don't want my kid arrested. I said, if your son is at a point where he is hitting you as a mom, you're responsible to make sure that stops. What's going to happen when he gets married and has kids?
Yeah,
So
if he's going to do it at home, he's going to do it
So, I
elsewhere
mean,
in the world.
people do what people can get away with. When they can't get away with it, they stop doing it. But when it comes to mental health and psychosis and all that, there's no real reasoning with them. So you get professional help as soon as you can. And if somebody wants help, make sure if somebody says, I'm feeling depressed, I'm feeling suicidal, instead of get over it, get help.
And I think something we've talked about before is that when it comes to mental health and when it comes to addiction, there's not a cure.
Right.
There's treatment, and there is constant treatment, and you can never drop off on it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, look at me, for instance. I've been clean and sober for 42 years. I can't drink or use drugs because I know I got that addictive personality. So I'll never be cured from that. I just won't ever go there.
There you go.
One day at a time. Hey,
Perfect.
thanks.
Thank you so much for joining us.
It's always a pleasure.
Yep. That is Cary Quashen with Action Drug Rehab here in Santa Clarita. And if you would like more information on the barricade that happened yesterday, we'll be doing a recap later today, as well as the story that is currently up on our website. For more information, you can tune in to KHTS FM 98.1 AM 1220 or head on over to hometownstation.com.
Hometown, your hometown station.